On this episode of the Ikigai podcast, Saori Okada returns to talk about the wisdom of Japan, which is the title of her new book. In December 2021, Saori joined me on episode 35 to talk about what it means to be Japanese. So can you believe it, Saori? That was 4 years ago.
I cannot. Oh my goodness. Oh, time flies, but I'm so excited to see you again.
Likewise, it is good to see you, and it is wonderful to have you back on the podcast. And you've had a few significant life changes. So would you like to give us an update?
Yeah, sure. Well, I am married now since we've talked, and I'm pregnant with my first child. And so she's coming early next year. And I'm excited for this next chapter.
I think you'll be a very loving, caring, playful, wonderful mother. I'm sure you're going to enjoy the journey of motherhood. I wish you lots of joy and happiness along the way.
Oh, that's so kind. Yes, I will try my best.
So we have connected to talk about and celebrate and promote your new book, Wisdom of Japan. How did this opportunity to write the book come about?
Yes, that's a great question. It came about actually from the publisher. So Michael Amara is the independent UK book publisher that reached out, and the editor really actually wanted to produce something that was more introductory in nature. So it meant that you didn't have to be an expert in Japan, but it was really meant to be something that anyone could pick up and it could be interesting to read. So, we've actually included like 60 core concepts that are in various types of, Japanese culture. The idea is that these are timeless wisdom concepts that can empower you through your mind, your body, and your soul. So that's really how it came about.
Yes, I've been reading it, and I know you're inviting the reader to reflect, and you're offering, these small moments of reconnection to oneself and others and to what matters. And I think we need that. We need to pause and reflect. And these 60 Japanese words and proverbs, I think, really encourage that. Was this book a challenge to write?
Yes, it was. I think it was a challenge because the goal was really to, make it simple enough so that anyone can understand it, but also make sure that it is authentic and it provides value. So if you go through the page, you'll see that there's actually not more than, 150 words for each concept. And so this was like a different type of challenge where I had to really try to get down to the core of each concept and try to explain it in a way that resonates with people. But then I always wanted to make sure that it wasn't just, you read a concept. So at the end, I've always tried to weave in some sort of action or some reflection moments. And I think that was a different type of exercise that I've never done before. I think that was really a meaningful challenge. Yeah. And I think the other thing I would say is that you'll see that each concept has a corresponding ukiyo print, like a Japanese traditional print. And I picked that for each concept. And that took actually so much more time than almost the writing itself, I would say, because I really wanted to make sure like the visual cues aligned with the concept and it resonated and it helped enhance the concept. So I hope people take some time to read the words, but also appreciate the pictures as well, because I feel like they go hand in hand and hopefully enhance the concept.
I was actually going to ask you that, and I might ask you that later. So they're beautiful pictures, and they do, I think, highlight the message of each page. So well done. Yeah, it's not easy to write a book, and I think you're right. It's far more challenging to write less and convey more when you have this restriction of so many words per page. But I think it's nice to have one of those books you can pick up and open up a page and read something and have this reflection. And these Japanese cultural concepts are so unique, and you seem to have this endless lexicon of words that are so inspiring. I learned a few new words, which I'll touch on.
Oh, you did? Great.
Yeah, I wanted to read the introduction of your book. You write, in Japan, wisdom often lives quietly, tucked into daily rituals, shared through age-old phrases or felt in the turning of seasons. These lessons aren't loud or grand, but gentle, balanced, and deeply human. So, shall we share some of these proverbs and cultural concepts?
Yes, yes, absolutely.
So, something I noticed quickly was that there were several proverbs that included the notion of shin,
Mm,
which can also be understood as kokoro,
mm,
ishinden shin,
mm.
shoshin, heijoshin, and one of my favorite words, kokorozashi. So, can you explain shin or kokoro and how significant the word and concept plays out in Japanese culture and in daily life?
Yes, no, I love how you picked up on that. And I think kokoro is such a fascinating concept. So when I try to describe it, I always say that in Japan, when if we think about someone, we say they have a karada, and that's their physical body, and then we have their kokoro, and their kokoro encompasses their mind, their heart, their soul, and it's really all of that, and it's not separated, which I think is really interesting. Versus perhaps in the West, like we use words such as mind, we use such as heart, so they're very separate. And I think when we go back to the root connection of what that means. And kokoro is our mind and our soul and our heart are all interconnected, and they all are one and the same. And so, the words that you mentioned, it shows how we really emphasize the idea of kokoro in Japanese culture. And for example, kokorozashi, which is, moving in your heart's direction. That's really the word for intention. And so I think that's all about moving with your heart. It also extends beyond yourself. Ishin Denshin is about having that soul to soul connection. So it's not really about the mind, but it's when you have that really deep connection with someone. When we think about Japanese culture, a lot of the times it's not mind driven per se. It's more like kokoro driven, which encompasses the mind, of course, but there's that spiritual side. There's also the heart connection that I feel like sometimes we don't talk about enough.
Yeah, I love it. I love the word. It took me a while to sort of get it. And then when I explain it to people, I'll often say in the West, we have this notion of you think with your mind, feel with your heart. And they're these separate concepts. And then kokoro is more like they're in unison, and you can't really think and feel without both working together. And when they do work together, that's when your spirit or soul seems to come alive. So that's also your idea that we have a karada and we have a kokoro. That's also a really nice way to explain it. So I might steal that.
Feel free to, yes.
Another one of my favorite words in the book, and a word I think will be a theme for me next year, and maybe it might be my kakezomi, is
Ah.
yutori.
Yes.
I think everyone needs yutori in their life. So do you want to explain what that is?
Yes. Oh, such a great pick, Nick. So yutori is this idea where you live with spaciousness. And I think this is especially important. And this is actually one of the concepts that I do really talk to my friends a lot about, because I think in this day and age, we all need hitori, but it's really almost this solution or the opposite of, I feel like, what we are doing right now, where we are constantly doing more, more, more. We are trying to cram things. We are constantly moving, versus yutori, I think, is more about, do you have room in your life? And this is not just time. It's about your mental spaciousness, your physical spaciousness, your spiritual spaciousness. When you have yutori, it's that feeling where you have room to breathe and reflect and grow. I think, unfortunately, we really have to be intentional in today's life, or you will not have yutori, just because of how much we are given in terms of exposure, in terms of social media, or, all the distractions that we have today. And so, it's about being intentional with the spaciousness that we want to have in our day to day.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're overwhelmed. We're distracted. It's as if we're becoming addicted to distraction. And when we do have moments to pause, we still have this urge to pick up our phone because we're so used to doing that. And interestingly, the psychometric tool, the Ikigai 9 scale, has kokoro, I think it's kokoro no yutori ga aru as one of their measures.
Right.
And that is the one most people score low on.
Mm.
So it's very relatable to Ikigai. Having yutori would obviously give you this sense of life's worth living when I have this spaciousness, or I have the room to have peace of mind.
Yes. Nick, you mentioned like this is something that you are thinking about for your 2026. I was just curious, like, are there certain ways that you want to try to implement that, or can I ask like why you want to make that your intention?
I'm quite ambitious and I like to do things. I really realized that this year when I went to Japan in May and I was finishing off a book, and then I was there to promote a book, and I was there to find new activities for future Ikigai leadership retreats. And I was miserable. I was stuck in a hotel trying to finish off this book. I was all over the place. And then I felt, I'm doing everything half-heartedly, like chutahampa. And yeah, I actually felt quite lonely and almost depressed, like, oh, why do I do this to myself? Realize ambition has this sort of double-edged sword. It's exciting, you grow, you learn, you create all these opportunities, but then of course there's the work, and if you're too ambitious, you end up doing nothing well. And I found myself constantly stressed. And then interestingly, last month I went to Japan just to be a participant for a leadership Japan experience with Katie Anderson, who's been a guest on this podcast. And that was great. I didn't have to, plan anything, worry about anything. And I cleared my schedule. I didn't have to take any calls. So I had a really good taste of not having yutori and having yutori. And I thought, I really need to have more yutori. And obviously other areas. There's, financial, I guess I want to move to Japan to live again. So there's that goal and need a certain amount of money. So I think you mentioned yutori it's not just a mental construct or idea. It's also financial, relationship, yutori, having enough space in your relationships, even physically. Yeah, you can have this sense of space. You strike me as someone who has a lot of yutori. Is that true?
Maybe I'm just covering up. Well, no, I'm kidding. No, I mean, first off, thank you so much for sharing your story. And I mean, I will say too, where, I think I can fall into those cycles as myself. I always say that like I'm never perfect. And when I'm writing these concepts, I always feel like they're just as insightful to me as I'm writing them. I can absolutely agree with you in the fact that when you're writing a book and you're doing everything that is tied to it, sometimes you feel like you don't have that spaciousness because you have certain deadlines that you want to meet and you want to make sure that it's reflective of, the best work that you could write. So I will absolutely say that I felt that for myself as well. But actually something that I've been doing since this book has come out is I do flip a page in the morning to a certain concept. And I reflect on it myself. For me, I always say that this is like a continuous journey myself. And I think that is part of having that discipline because if I'm not careful, I know that I will fall back into this non-yutori life because it's interesting. I found that sometimes when I try to do more, and that's actually a concept in the book like isogaba maware, which is, yes.
That was my next question, actually. Yeah. So
if that means like, if the more you try to hurry things, it's actually just not going to work out. And I think that's something that probably I've done many times. And what I found is when I try to create yutori, things will actually come into place more naturally. That's not just in projects, but that can be just with relationships as well. When you give it the space to breathe, to, nurture it in a way that's not rushed, I found that it actually is so much more beneficial
Mm.
to both of us than trying to force something when it's not going to help anyone.
Well, that is interesting because I did notice that you, and I'm assuming this was intentional. After yutori, you do have that proverb, isogaba, maware. Do you want to break it down for our listeners?
Yes, so isogaba means like if you rush, and then maware is like when it means you'll turn in circles. Even like the photo that's on the concept is really with the wind blowing and someone trying to rush through things, and that was really like the visual that I had in mind. I feel like when you're trying to do something, it's actually just more. It's not going to help you in any way. It's this idea that it's like, well, in that state, let's actually take a step back.
Mm.
What if we didn't move? Say you're going running through a storm and everything is moving really fast. If you're moving fast, it's actually going to accelerate yourself, right? But you're going to be pushed more by the wind. Say if you actually took some time to stay still underneath something, you're actually going to have that stillness, and that's
Mm.
actually going to be helpful for you. Hopefully that visual enhances the concept. But I do think it's important, and I don't think that's the natural instinct. I think sometimes if you think you're like thinking that you have to do something, you're like, okay, I have to do it faster. I have to do it faster. That's probably a very natural feeling that we get, but it's more like, okay, what if we actually just stood still and
Mm.
took some time to breathe? Like, then we could actually probably take a moment to figure out what it is that we really want to do or what's going to help us.
You write this, it leads to repeated mistakes and unexpected setbacks and wasted time. And it reminds me of the word chanto, sort of like when we slow down to do things properly and then we complete them, we have this satisfaction that, I've done it properly, I can move on. But when you're rushing about, you do things half-assed, you make mistakes, you get even more angry, and eventually you have to stop. Yeah, anyway, so you must well stop and pause before you create all this madness, before you're running around in circles.
Yeah.
So that was new to me. So I like that one.
Oh, I'm glad.
The book is full of these amazing words and proverbs. Another one that I was so happy to see, and I had forgotten this word, and it is so unique, is setsunai.
Yes.
I love this word. And it kind of reminds me of natsukashi, this idea of nostalgia, but even setsunai has this subtlety to it. So do you want to explain setsunai?
Yes. Oh, this is such a unique word that I'm so glad I was able to include, because I feel like it really does explain this feeling. But it's basically like when your heart tugs with bittersweetness. And it's that ache of nostalgia. So that there is that element of natsukashi, like you mentioned, but it's almost there is this combination of joy and sadness when we cherish a memory, because it gently slips away. I always
Mm.
feel like, rather than resisting this feeling, sometimes people try to resist feelings of sadness. It's actually, if we could genuinely feel those feelings of setsunai, it actually helps us understand that we have lived so deeply. So I always think it's not about trying to push those away, but can
Mm.
we hold those moments really true to our hearts? Because I think setsunai is like the most beautiful feeling that we could have in a way, because it means that it mattered to us, that moment.
Yeah, I got to say, the first line, setsunai is the ache of nostalgia, the pull of the past, transient moment that touches your heart. It was like, you encapsulated it so well just in the first sentence, especially the first 6 words. Setsunai is the ache of nostalgia. So it is a beautiful word, and I think it's good to go there more often.
Yes, I agree. I was just thinking that, like, sometimes with my husband, we go for a walk in the morning, and he used to always say, like, his grandma loved like red robin. So whenever we see a red robin, we think of her, we say it out loud. Sometimes it could be those moments that are bittersweet, but in a way, I always feel like that's how We remember certain people. We remember what they meant to us, and it's a great way to give life purpose, because sometimes I think we're very surface level, and it is easier sometimes to ignore those feelings of setsunai because it's not necessarily a happy or easy emotion per se, but I think there is that element that is, I think, part of Japanese culture, or different words that can remind us that it's not a bad feeling to feel that sense of setsunai.
Hey, it's Nick here. Do you want to become an Ikigai coach? The Ikigai Tribe Coach certification is the only program supported and endorsed by Japan's leading Ikigai experts. You'll learn authentic research, practical coaching tools, and join a global community of coaches making a real impact. Find out more at ikigaitribe.com. Now back to the episode. The ache of nostalgia or heart tugging. You mentioned that. So reflect on what moments in your life hold the heart tugging weight of setsunai. And speaking of birds, you have several words and proverbs that talk about nature. And one is kachou fuugetsu.
Yes, yes,
And I knew
yes.
this word. So when I saw it, I thought, great choice. And this has significance because of the kanji characters used in the word. So do you
Yes.
want to touch on that one?
Yes, of course. So this one is really about letting nature inspire you. And if you look at kachou fuugetsu, so like the first character is like flower, the second one is bird, fu is for wind, and then getsu is like for moon. And so it's really about having nature is both an experience and an expression. And it's really about letting nature invite you to shape your perspective, but also creativity. And I think that's actually really beautiful because, I believe like nature is the most beautiful gift in the world, and it can inspire so much of our creativity. And back to this idea of kokoro, I think creativity actually is really coming from our heart, our kokoro. Nature is what touches us. I always think that it's a really great word that encapsulates many of the elements of nature. You have your flowers, you have the beautiful birds, you have the wind that you feel, and the beauty of the moon. To me, it gives such a beautiful like visual. When you read these words, you're like, oh my gosh, like I just want to be in nature.
It's beautiful. It's so cool. I remember when I first saw it, and I worked out, the kanji, and this is a yoji jukuko. This is like a 4 kanji character word, and it's not the same. It wouldn't be the same as writing out flower, bird, wind, moon in English. There's this beauty to the obviously to the kanji characters, but whoever thought of this and wrote it, just brilliant, because it does convey all these different elements and the beauty of nature. And maybe in the Western world, like we wouldn't maybe consider the moon to be a significant part of nature, but you seem to. In Japan, you even have moon bathing, and you have haiku related to the moon. So I love how nature extends to the moon.
Yes. Oh, actually that's such a fascinating point, because I was looking into the moon for like my next book actually more, and I was realizing the differences like you mentioned, where in Japan there's hundreds of words actually that are used for certain words about the moon. It's not just a full moon. Even like there's basically like 5 6 different ways to say full moon. There's also a word for like the 16th moon, the 17th moon, and it's actually very fascinating. For example, in Japan, like rather than the full moon, like the day after the full moon is considered more beautiful because it's not perfect. A lot of people like this idea that it's missing a little bit of something, and yet it's so beautiful. And I do think that there is this celebration of moon viewing that I guess perhaps you're right. I guess in Australia, for example, like are there words or like days where you celebrate the moon?
Not really. Only if we hear on the news. It might be a full moon or the moon's at its closest to the Earth, and you'll get this striking image of the moon that does look significantly closer, or an eclipse. But we don't. Well, it's nursery rhymes like "The Man on the Moon" is about. That's the only thing that comes to mind. So we certainly don't tie it to. Yeah, I mean, Japan has this subtlety to observing things, and this is obviously why you have all these different words just for moon. And it's like, why is that? Why does your culture, why has your culture had this presence to notice something that's quite subtle, and then a word evolves out of it. Someone obviously coins a word to describe it, and that gets used so much, it's like a common word. The learning of Japanese words never ends. If you write this book about the moon, or I can learn all these new words. So, yeah, it's awesome.
No, I'm learning every day myself. It's even if you're Japanese, I feel like you're continuously surprised at different elements.
Well, that's an interesting experience, because I have found the people who live outside of Japan begin to understand the incredible beauty and the incredible subtlety and the depth and breadth of their culture, because either you probably get asked a lot about it when people find out, oh, you're from Japan, they ask you all these questions. But also you see this contrast of cultures, and you discover, oh, this isn't talked about in the UK, or this isn't practiced in the UK. Did you have that experience where you realized slowly, or were there significant moments where you realized, oh, my culture is very unique and special?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I was younger, I think I mentioned this when I first, like 4 years ago when I first came on, but I think it was about like when I was in my 20s or in my teens, I ran away from my culture a lot. I thought that I wanted to be more American, maybe, or I wanted to be not Japanese. I tried a lot to push away my own culture, unfortunately. And then when I moved to New York and started a corporate job, I started to feel a sense of disconnect within myself, where I felt like I wasn't really connecting with my roots in a way. And so that really started more of a journey for myself, really, about like trying to figure out what's important to me. What is Japanese culture, and what are the things that I grew up with that perhaps I was unfortunately not listening to my mom or my dad about certain things. And then I think from there, that was really where yeah, I always say I have a New Yorker's mind and Japanese soul. And like, I try to use that as a way to try to potentially like understand maybe, oh, there are certain aspects of Japan that maybe are very different, or it needs an explanation, or maybe people don't understand the nuances of it. And maybe I could provide some sort of authentic definition, or some sort of meaning behind all these words. And so I think that's really where this journey has started. And I think it continues to happen every day. When even in the UK, I found that there's a lot of interest in Japan at the moment, where maybe Nick, you see it too, where there's a lot of people traveling to Japan, which is great. I think it's about trying to convey certain concepts authentically, make sure that it rings true.
Well, I think you do that really well. And I have a bit of it's not a confession. I think I shared this with you. But when I wrote my book, my first book, Ikigai Khan, from our conversation, you said, you spoke about your father, and you asked your dad, oh, what's self-actualization like in Japanese for you? And he said it was jibun rashi, like just wanting to be yourself. And I wrote about that in my book. Like in Japan, they just talk about jibun rashi, and in the West, we we talk things up and we want to say, oh, I want to achieve this and do this and, be the best version of myself and all that sort of thing. And I was really grateful and happy you reminded me of that expression, because it's such a cool idea. Self-actualization should be obviously about the self, being your unique self and expressing that, rather than trying to be this elusive best version of yourself that you can never really be. So I love that about Japan. There's no word for the best version of yourself. And Japanese don't talk things up and announce things and tell the world how they're going to change their life or change the world next year. They're sort of very humble and quiet.
Mm.
I'm officially thanking you on this episode.
Oh my gosh, no, thank you so much for sharing that. I'm so glad to hear it. And you're right, where I do think that I mean, I think there's also in Japan, there's this idea that when you become too potentially like overconfident in yourself, or that's where actually troubles arise. And I do think there is that continuous element of even in the book I was looking through more of like, what are the martial arts, what do they talk about, in terms of continuous discipline. And it's never about once you reached a goal, you're done. That's actually very much the opposite. I feel like they always say like, once you think that, then you need to go straight back down to the bottom and start over because you're absolutely not getting this idea of continuous learning, which again is like beginner's mindset is shoshin. It actually tells us that when you become more of a master, you are more susceptible to the idea that you have finished, that you are good, that you have this best version. And it's actually more of a cautionary, reminder that we have to keep this mind as we become better.
Yeah, I love that one. The Shoshin. And does that also include the idea of having the same kind of curiosity and excitement you first had when you were learning something, and you try to go back to that as well?
Yes, 100%. Yeah. Because it's true, where I feel like the more you do it, of course, you probably may not get as excited because say you've done something for 30 years, you know the process. But it's also, again, I think it does come back to this shoshin is also with your kokoro. And it's not mind driven. It's more this idea that the feelings that you get when you started something new, it's fun, it's exciting, it's different. You have this sense of joy. And it's also about that feeling that we don't want to forget as well.
I love it. So we could talk about hundreds of words, but I did make a note of a few words inspired by Bushido. I guess the way of the warrior. And two were yu and gi. So do you want to touch on those and like why did you choose those two words?
Yes. So yu is the Bushido virtue of courage. And I like this word because sometimes we think of courage as, outward bravery. I think like when some people think of the samurai, they're like, oh yeah, they're strong. They could, fight very like, intelligently with courage. But I think the deeper meaning behind that was about how it's about not just that external fear that you have, but facing what scares you internally. And to me, this is very important because I think true, genuine courage is not about just being reckless and having aggression outwardly, but it's having that inner courage to face your inner demons per se. And then I think that's what's really important in today's world, because I don't think it's a scary thing to do 100% to face that inner what scares you. But I think that was really important to me to include in the book because it reminds us that the samurai, a true samurai or bushido, is like about facing both.
Yeah, we're afraid to face our own fears and face the inner demon. And when we can't do that, we seem to resort to external violence, which obviously is not courage at all.
Yes.
And then you mentioned gi.
Yes, so gi is about righteousness, and it's really about having justice and fairness, and it is considered, the most essential virtue of the samurai. And for me, I think it's about that deep sense of integrity that we have. I think it's important because sometimes when you think of the samurai, you could just think that they're just like strong warriors, but they actually are much more than that. That the virtues that are instilled is really rooted in integrity and making sure that we don't act in short-term gain for ourselves. But it's rooted in this deeper sense of integrity. And I think that's really important in today's world because we have to remind ourselves that it's not just us that we're thinking about. We have to make certain actions that are beyond just short-term profit and loss. And it's really about the long-term sense of integrity. And so I wanted to include that as well because I thought that could be a really good reminder for people.
I think so. I'm beginning to believe this moral code of the samurai is the example we should follow for a modern leadership or just a personal moral code. Yu and gi, they're not just like courage and righteousness. There's more to them. And this is, I guess this is part of the joy of it, really diving deep into Japanese words rather than just taking these superficial translations. So I need more time to sort of learn these words. But then this could be my yutori problem, where I'm thinking, I got to learn more words. It could be also a case of energy. Need more energy to learn more words, which you talk about. So you have a few words using the character ki, which is energy. So genki, ki. And then I guess this would be a proverb, which is shinki ryoku no ichi. Is that right?
Shinki ryoku no ichi, yes.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, do you want to talk about ki and then touch on the proverb?
Yes. Yeah. So ki is, this Japanese word for energy. I think it's actually so interesting to see how often like ki is used in Japanese words. So you mentioned first one, like genki. That's the word for, how are you when we say how are you? But, the characters is, the first one is moto, which is your foundation. And then ki is energy. So we're actually asking, oh, how is your energy? How's your foundational energy? I will say Japanese people are not thinking that when we're saying that.
That would be funny if I did. Yeah.
That would be funny. But I think it's so fascinating that this is the word for how are you, in a way that to me, I'm like, oh, back when we were thinking about, how we're talking, it's just so deeply ingrained in the conversations that we have. So I think it is really like a good example of how ki is used. And then the proverb that you're talking about, shinki ryoku no ichi, it's really about when you have this connection between the unity of the heart, the energy, and strength. And this is from kendo, which is the Japanese martial art of swordsmanship. This is really when we learn to harmonize our kokoro and our ki, so our energy, and our chikara, which is our strength. So, it's this idea that when we're able to have that harmony and alignment, that's when we can actually have our strongest strength and really put down that sword with the greatest alignment. This is really one of the principles in Kendo, but it also goes beyond martial arts. And it says that when you want to really align yourself, it's really about keeping all of those elements in mind to really reach your full potential.
Yeah. Kokoro, energy and power coming together yet balanced. It's fascinating. This actually reminds me of another one from judo. I think it's Shingi Tai.
Mm-hmm.
Shin is obviously heart, gi is wisdom, tai is body, and karada. And it's like these are the three foundational elements of judo as a martial art. And actually for my brand and my hanko for my business, which I did not design. Japanese person designed it, and he used shingitai and then added you, like friendship, to
Oh,
that, and that became my brand, like the brand values or my Ikigai tribe values.
oh
So
wow.
yeah, your kokoro, using your kokoro, having this wisdom. I guess karada would mean probably more like health, and then this idea of friendship. So yeah, these are so inspiring, these proverbs,
Yes.
and they
Mhm.
can kind of change your life. Some of these words have changed my life. So
No, me too. Yes,
absolutely.
and I love that. I think sometimes we think like like it's just a sport, for example, like judo, like what can it teach us? But there's actually so much wisdom within that. I think even the one that I put for judo in the book is like juyoku go seisu, which means like flexibility conquers strength.
Yeah.
And this is such a great, lesson, not just in judo, but I feel like in life, I always say that like I try to be like a bamboo that's like, meaning they're strong, but they're also very flexible. And I think that's
Excellent.
also a really important concept in life that we could take because sometimes we think that pure strength is going to get us there. But a lot of times it's more about adaptability and our ability to be flexible.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the beauty of judo. I mean, it's often translated as the gentle way, which seems like a contradiction to a martial art. Like, shouldn't it be the stronger way or something? So this is the really beautiful and deep wisdom from Japanese words and culture. Obviously, I was very happy to see ikigai in your book. So I'm glad you didn't miss that one. But what is your favorite word or proverb from the book?
Oh my goodness, you are asking me to choose my favorite child almost. Uh, I'm trying to think. Well, there's so many, and of course, I had to include ikigai, even though it's hard to do it justice in 150 words, to be honest. But I do think. Let's see. I'm trying to think. Something that I did like was this idea of ku, which is the word for I wrote it as space like the open sky because it's actually the character for Sora as well.
Mm.
And there's so much words that all of them I love, but I feel like when I think about myself, what I try to do every day is I always try to look at the sky and take a deep breath in the morning. And for me, this is the best way to have that sense of emptiness. Because when we have that sense of emptiness, to me, I think the sky is the most beautiful thing in the world. And so when I look up at the sky, I get this sense of peace and emptiness. And I could feel it almost like coming to me as well. And so I think it always reminds me that we need this openness because when we have
Mm.
that sense, we could be so much better as individuals. And I could also see the connection between nature. And it's really, I think it encompasses so much of what I hope people feel when they read this book is to have that sense of space.
It is quite beautiful to go outside and look at the sky. It is very calming when you can do that and you're not listening to music. You just go outside and look at the sky and the clouds or the blueness, and something so common, so everyday can be so beautiful if we're present to notice and feel it. So was it hard choosing 60? It must have been really hard choosing 60.
It was hard. Yes, it was really hard to try to. That was probably the first step I took, was just writing down certain words that I liked. And I also wanted to make sure that it was accessible. So it's including some well known ones, like Wabi Sabi Ikigai, of course. But then I also wanted to make it things that people haven't heard of. So it was about really diving into more of the martial arts and then the traditional arts of Japan. And then I also wanted to make sure it was about everyday aspects as well. So I tried my best to honestly, I was just trying to pay attention to what I said when I was talking to my friends or, talking to my parents. What are some words that we always say and we don't really think about because they're actually so much more. Because another one I really love is shogunai.
Mm.
And I wanted to include this word because I think it is often mistranslated as it can't be helped. And it's just this idea that we give up, but it's actually so much more than that. It's about accepting that there are certain things that, are outside of our control. So it actually is the sense of acceptance that could give us the sense of freedom. And Japanese people, I say this all the time to my friends or to my family, sometimes to cheer them up or just to help, convey the fact that it's outside our control, but let's move on. So it was really important to me to include things that if you read some of them, I feel like if you go to Japan, you'll probably hear that people saying it.
Well, that one's interesting because I remember when I was first interested in Japanese and I started making friends in Melbourne, and I'd often be asked, like something would happen, we've got a picnic plan and it rains and we can't go, so we have to change our plans. And my Japanese friends would go, "Oh, shogunai," and they'd ask me, "Oh, Nick, what's shogunai in English?" I think what you said, like can't be helped, or there's no way. It doesn't really sound natural. So, and then later I realized, it's more expressing, this comfort with acceptance, or
Yes.
But there are so many words that include. This is I guess the challenge often is there are so many words that convey acceptance or this idea of space, like ku, ma, yutori, yogu, different contexts and subtleties, but we don't seem to have this sort of lexicon of words even for one concept of space. So that's a challenge for me as a learner, getting the subtleties of, what's the difference between yutori and yoyu? Like, I'd find that pretty hard to explain. So, would you find that hard to explain, something like those two words? They seem like really close, where ma would be, ma seems more cultural and philosophical, and it's like everywhere in Japan. Yutori seems more practical. Yeah.
No, they're all, in a way, they're actually so difficult because they're like just so different that it's like the subtleties are almost too like difficult to describe because it's like there's no words to translate that. But I almost feel, so it's just like a never ending challenge. But when I think yoyu is, it is similar to yoyu is the word to having that sense of space. But yutori, I feel like actually encompasses more of the heart element as well. And it's a little bit more like, it's not just moment to moment, I would say. It's more about like the life that you have. You feel that sense of yutori versus yoyu could just be in those specific moments that you have. And it's not necessarily as deep, I would say, in terms of having that element of, your spiritual spaciousness, for example. That would not apply to yoyu as it would with yutori.
Okay. You have so yoyu's like I have enough space or time or whatever in this moment. So this is the joy of learning and talking about these words. But as you mentioned, the book also has beautiful picture cards that do look like ukiyo. So ukiyo meaning pictures of the floating world, that's how they're translated.
Oh, that is how they translate it. Yes. Yeah. And I think that's a beautiful visual. I think it refers also to like a specific type of print that was done during the certain time of Japan. But I think that's a beautiful translation. So I think we could use that one of the floating world.
And so they're those wood block art prints. So I imagine that was a challenge. That would have added a complexity of like, what can I find a picture for this word? And does it match and sort of articulate the essence of the word? And you did mention it took you longer to find the appropriate image for the word. but it's beautiful. It's visually stunning. So people, I think, will also enjoy just looking at these full pages that do look like, although they are traditional woodblock art prints in the book itself.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear
Yeah.
that. Because you're right. It is really hard. And I mean, there's thousands of photos and potential options that we could have had. And so I almost felt like I was diving into like art history class, studying myself. And so I feel like I learned a lot during this process because, I would look at certain artists and then, I would read into their history and, what kind of, symbolisms they had. And it's also just, it was really interesting for me too, because there's actually so many historical figures that people write, but they also represent certain things. And so, like, you want to make sure that those align with the concepts as well. And so, yes, I felt like it probably took me a little bit more, yeah, maybe just as much as writing or a little bit more. But no, I'm so grateful because I have been hearing people appreciate the art form and it does help. So I'm like, oh, I'm so glad to hear that because, yeah, I think it does add to it now that I look at it after it's been some time.
Well, there you go. And that gives some insight into how much effort and work goes into the book, because there's all these words or options or things you ended up not doing, not putting in the book that you probably still wrote. I'm sure you wrote more than 60 words and you're working with an editor and maybe there are decisions being made. And yeah, so there's all this unseen or unread work in a book as well. So it is a very challenging project. It takes a lot of time, but you've obviously done this with a lot of love and care. So congratulations. And I think it makes for a wonderful Christmas book. So it could be a great book for our listeners to buy as a gift to themselves or to someone interested in Japan or just someone interested in wanting to, slow down and have these cues to pause and reflect on all these beautiful aspects of life. So where can people buy the book, Saori?
Yes. So if you're based in the UK, you can find it at Waterstones as well as a lot of independent bookstores. But if you are international, it is on Amazon as well. So you could order your copy. And yes, I'm so glad you couldn't have said it better than myself, Nick. So thank you for wrapping that up so nicely. My goal was really, it's not really a book to like rush through it. I wouldn't recommend like reading everything in one go. It's more about flipping to a certain page and then taking your time and sitting with it. And I think that's the best way for you to enjoy the book.
Yeah, it could be a good book to encourage yutori, and maybe you read one page and you look at the print and maybe do that with your morning beverage and reflect and take it really slow.
Yes, love that idea.
So before we wrap up, any other news, any plans? Is there another book? I think you've been mentioning there is this other book. Do you want to touch on that?
Yes, I am writing another book that's coming out next year. Yes, I don't know. I feel like I could share more information next year. I just know it's coming out. I did just submit the manuscript, but it's going to be very different. I think it's going to be a little bit more expansive and in the concept, but it's this idea that we want to learn how to accept and celebrate being ourselves versus comparing ourselves to others. But I'm excited about that. But yes, I will say, yes, like I mentioned, I am pregnant right now. So I think the first half of the year might be a little bit slower for me, but I am going to practice what I preach and enjoy this moment. I mean, I don't think it'll be slower. I think I'll be lack of sleep, but I think I'll be in a fun phase that's a little bit different from what I was doing this year.
No, you'll love it. So yeah, I wish you lots of love and success, and we should not wait 4 years for our next conversation.
Yes, please. No, we have to do it sooner.
So thank you for joining me. And the book is Wisdom of Japan by Saori Okada. And yeah, I recommend you buy the book and enjoy reading it and looking at the wonderful floating pictures. Yeah, I can't say this word.
Ukiyo-e, ukiyo-e.
Ukiyo-e. Thank you so much for joining me today, Saori.
Thank you for having me.
This episode was brought to you by the Ikigai Coach Certification Program, the only Ikigai Coach certification supported and endorsed by Japan's leading Ikigai experts. If you'd like to help others discover meaning and purpose in their lives, visit ikigaitribe.com to learn more.